Hello everybody and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be doing an episode of the Q&A. I also wanted to explain it's been a little bit quiet on the channel this week, and the reason for that is because I've finally started playing Final Fantasy X. Huge preparations for the LP, been doing a ton of stuff. If you guys been listening to the podcast, you'll probably be up to date with that already, and you will see the fruits of those labours coming up very, very soon. Anyway, I thought I'd do a Q&A today. Let's jump straight into it. The first question comes from Ottawa, who says, now that someone can pay to free Canak and use him, do you think someone from Destiny's Edge 2.0 will do it? Canak could join this group and be the Sylvari member of the group, as Destiny's Edge 1.0 had a member of each of the 5 main races. What do you think? It sort of worries, you are not the only person to ask me this question, and it sort of worries me that a lot of people are asking me this question. Is this what we want? Another kind of cookie cutter, hey, we're heroes of the world and we have one of each race adventuring party that we've already seen before and wasn't particularly interesting in the first instance either? And what does this mean if they really do go down this direction as far as Destiny's Edge 1.0 goes for? Are they just off in the dust now, whatever, we'll leave them alone because we can't really pay the voice actors or whatever to do it? It just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't enthuse me. I really liked Canak as this vigilante character, someone who we were against throughout the plot, but we could really empathize with as we were against him. You know, an actual enemy that wasn't just, oh, this is black, this is white, here we go, let's do it. You know, Guild Wars 2 makes so much effort to set up those kinds of clear-cut situations. I really enjoyed Canak for what he was. I've expressed on the channel before how I'm sort of sad that he's become such a goody two-shoes while he's in the cage. However, there have been developments on his story. People that have no idea what I'm talking about. It's a character that in some of the least related Living World updates to do with the Morgemoth and Scarlet arc last year was a Sylvari who was a part of the Consortium, and when the Consortium messed stuff up on South Sun Cove, basically, he went rogue and started trying to kill them, taking matters into his own hands. For that reason, we ended up arresting him, and until we arrested him, he was a really scary guy, and though he probably had good intentions, he was very, very villainous. Since he's been in the cage, he's just been spewing all of this nonsense about how he's supposedly a goody two-shoes, and there has been a story that was developed on with this most recent patch about how someone can basically pay to take him out of prison into their service. And obviously that's in his best interest. He'll no longer be in a cage. But basically he's a slave to whoever buys his billet. And this happens because he's a Lion's Arch prisoner, and there's a lot of commerce around many things in Lion's Arch, and that's just something normal for us to happen. There's even some dialogue completely unrelated to Canak, but about the idea of buying people's billets, just in some of the Labyrinthine Cliff dialogue, I believe, at the moment too. So the devs are really setting up the idea that this will happen. They even said in the most recent patch there is a noble woman, I believe they set it up, who is interested in buying Canak. My personal theory is this could be a niece, just because of how I think a niece could tie into other stuff in the future, but hey, they could go in any direction here. But it looks like Canak's going to get bought. And where they go with his story from that point on, I don't want to see him become a part of Destiny's Edge. I want to see him be who he is. And you know, that might seem kind of weird at the same time, because it's like, oh, I don't want any character development for the guy. I do want to see character development, but I don't want to see him just sort of blend into the sludge of all the other characters in the game. And, to be fair also, I could be overplaying this. I did notice that in some of the most recent dialogue, although Canak is being a goody two-shoes while you're talking to him in the cage, you as a character, you know, you respond obviously each time you click to a next bit of dialogue. Your character remains very suspicious of Canak, and the fact that your character remains very suspicious of Canak tells me that the devs haven't completely abandoned this idea of him being vigilante, and that I quite enjoy. So maybe it is just a ploy, maybe it is just a play, and eventually he's just gonna get out of jail and break free, and we'll see some interesting stuff happen with him. But yeah, that's kind of my stance on Canak. I don't want a Destiny's Edge 2.0 even slightly, and the fact that this new group might need a Sylvari just would suck. It really would, especially considering all the big ideas that could be going on with Sylvari right now, if they do turn out to be serious minions of Morgemoth or whatever. So the next question comes from Sab Looney, who says, hey WP, how do you get so much karma for your legendaries? I'm currently getting Frostfang, but the karma is really annoying for me to get. Frankly, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Edge of the Mist, like, I don't like to encourage what is basically mindless gameplay, really not that entertaining, but the karma train there, they're called karma trains for a reason, okay? You get an awful lot. If you've got a lot of characters, if you've been playing the game at least a year, and those birthday boosters have started rolling in, each one lasts 24 hours. My recommendation, get on a character that's very good at tagging stuff, like a staff guard, for example. Pop a birthday booster on that character, and only play that character while you are training in Edge of the Mist. What this means is you can get the full 24 hours benefit worth of 100% extra karma gain. And you can pair that up with other stuff. You can pair that up with regular karma boosters. There are some really good commanders out there in Edge of the Mist. To be a good commander in Edge of the Mist basically means bring the siege with you, make sure you don't run your Zerg into other Zergs, and drop boosters for people. And some Edge of the Mist karma train commanders do actually do this. They'll drop like a nice karma bonfire for you. By doing that, you can rack up tons of karma. If you've got an Ascended Amulet, you can put a karma gain infusion in it, which a lot of people recommend doing. That's how I get my karma, and frankly, it's a byproduct of the Edge of the Mist train, which I'm really only doing because I want World versus World ranks. I really want to try out this arrow cart thing, and it takes a lot of ranks to really min-max that, which is what I want to do. So I need to max out my Guard Slayer one, which I've already done. I needed to max out arrow cart, which I've already done. I've also maxed out defense against guards, so that's a bunch of other points. And now I need a bunch more points, like 75 more ranks, so that I can max out Siege Might. And it's only an extra 5% damage, but I want all of it so that I can finally get on an arrow cart and see what kind of damage you can do. So I've been doing loads of Edge of the Mist, and it just so happens I get a ton of karma at the same time. I crafted the Minstrel. I don't actually think I talked about it on the channel yet. I did tweet about it. I crafted the Minstrel last week, and karma was not an object for me while I was crafting that thing. And once again, I've got like 500,000 karma again. I haven't tried for that. It's just Edge of the Mist, I promise you. The other thing to consider too is they give you Obsi Shards straight up quite nicely, and it's not really karma you need, is it? It's Obsidian Shards that you need. If you've been doing the World versus World tournament meta, which, by the way, even though the tournament is now over, you can still get those chests. A lot of those give you a substantial amount of Obsidian Shards. Running Fractals, you can trade your relics for Obsi Shards. Obsi Shards, you can get a steady supply from PvP, and that really helps me out as well as far as karma is concerned. Next question is from Zara Sad, who says, "Hey WP, what do you think about the monster variation in GW2? I really enjoyed the different zones on my first playthrough up until around level 45, where it started becoming more and more of just Risen. Then, after level 60, it was strictly Risen. I mean, I get that it makes story sense, but I feel like ArenaNet got lazy and decided to just cut a few corners. It gets really boring to kill Risen for 40 levels. I actually don't think this was them trying to cut corners. I think this was just perhaps a bit of an oversight for them, and maybe it was something they realized was apparent towards the very end of development, but they sort of felt they didn't have time to do it. For as much as they talked about how, oh, we're only going to do it when it's ready, that clearly fell through at some point, otherwise we wouldn't have had the Zaitan fight that we had, right? We just have to accept this. And if you really look at Ore, yes, it has some interesting high concepts behind it, with the temples, with the meta events. The implementation of those high concepts was shoddy in the first place, but the maps too, they're very lackluster. The maps have got a certain aesthetic to them, but they really don't have much going on at all. You can tell how quickly those maps were slapped together, particularly if you ever break out of those maps. Nothing is clean about them. Nothing looks like it's had much QA or time or love put into them. Or when they got to that point, and many of the higher level things in Guild Wars 2, you can see that they didn't get as much tender loving care as they could have. And I'm sure they realized at one point, oh my god, we've got a lot of Risen at the end of the game, but they weren't in a place to fully address that issue. And you can tell that they would have wanted more, because there are some areas of Guild Wars 2 that have immense character variety and depth and difference between the different types of enemies you're fighting. Like underwater combat is barely something we participate in, even if underwater combat was all that they wanted it to be and everyone would love it and they'd still been putting underwater content into the game right now. There's still an immense amount of aquatic water life and variety in this game. You know, there's even a lot of creatures and things out there. I was filming a video, which will be going up at some point, about like a gopher that you can see in Queensdale. There's loads of variety in different things. It just tapers off in Ore. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin I would say, though, at the same time is, even though they are all Risen, even though they are all contributing to one title track, for example, there are a lot of varieties of Risen too. I mean, don't forget that too. It's not like saying, oh, the end of Guild Wars 2 is just full of skeletons, and there's only skeletons everywhere you see. Like, as far as the Risen are concerned, there are many different within their ranks, particularly when you look at personal story. I mean, some of them taper off. There aren't many mouths of or eyes of Zaitan, for example, while you're wandering around, or they just tend to be big champions every now and then. But there is a fair amount of variety within the Risen. It's just, it does get stale, because so much of the end of the game relies on that kind of thing. You know, I really think this is an interesting question as well, because we're going into an arc to do with Morgemoth. Every dragon champion has its own minions, and what do you guys think the variety should be like with Morgemoth? Clearly, it should be wider than what we saw with the Risen, but right now we've got barely anything. We've got, you know, potential, ooh, maybe the Sylvaria or whatever, right? The Nightmare Corp, maybe. But what else is there? What are Morgemoth minions? The Husks? Sure. Are the Worms somehow related to them? I'm already struggling, like, there's really not that much, so this could be an exciting time for us where we do see that enemy variety sort of explode, because there are so many different types of Morgemoth minions they're going to have to design in our fight against him. But we shall see. The next question comes from Sarah Alton, is like the most age-old question. I have to go back to it every now and then so that people are in the loop. Dear WP, I've been looking at some of your old videos and I noticed you'd started doing a series of videos in Guild Wars 1 lore for those who've never played to help them catch up on Guild Wars 2 lore. You seem to have gotten about halfway in both your Tyria and Cantha series. I was wondering if this was something you're ever going to finish, and if you have, where can I find it? I'm a pretty new sub, and I look forward to bringing on all your old videos this summer. Alright, here's the deal with this series, okay? Absolutely, I'm going to finish it. I've been telling people this for a year, and I can understand why people would start to think, is he really going to finish it? The reason I've stopped for now is I want to do this in chronological order, okay? I also have a fair amount of confidence that we will get Cantha eventually. If you watch the most recent entry to that series, I added a segment to the start, which at the time I thought I might regret, and I do regret it now because it was complete nonsense, but I added a section to the start of that video where, at the time, everybody seemed to think there was going to be no Cantha. There was this thing that came out that an artist or someone at ArenaNet in an interview had said, oh yeah, NCSoft sort of came along and said we couldn't create Cantha, this is why the Great Collapse happened, blah blah blah. This all ended up to pretty much be nonsense. The devs have stated numerous times since then, no, look, Cantha is on the table, we promise you it's on the table. And you know, they to this day, to this most recent patch, they're leaving hints and stuff about Cantha in the game. I have a reasonable amount of confidence. My speculation, I have a bit of a wager with Matt Visual at the moment on this, is that on the 2-year anniversary of the game, they will announce either an expansion or something very similar to an expansion, and I believe this content will take us to Cantha. I really do. So with this series, I want to do it in chronological order, so I cannot continue like the stuff in Prophecies, because to go back to Tyria the Continent means skipping forward many years in the storyline, and I miss much key plot stuff from the 2 campaigns that came prior to it, Factions and Nightfall. So I'm in Factions right now. I did the first Factions episode, which I'm very happy with. I actually have everything planned out for all of the faction stuff, including basically a full script for the next video. I've had that for a long time. I absolutely adore writing the scripts for those. It really, really is awesome to key into all of that lore. However, I don't want to put that up until they actually say, hey, look, Cantha is coming. So that when it does go up, it is completely relevant to what is going on with the community. Otherwise, what will happen is I'll spend a lot of time on these productions, put a lot of heart and soul, as cliche as that sounds, into these productions. People will be vaguely interested, but it won't have much relevance to the game. And then when Cantha does get announced, I'm going to be stuck in a weird place where I'm repeating myself and people don't really know to go back and look for those things, and I just don't want to have to deal with that. I want to get the most bang for my buck when I put it out, so that's why it's on hold, really. It is on hold because I am confident that Cantha will come. ArenaNet have never had the balls to say we are not doing an expansion, and there's a reason for that. It's either that they want to win everyone over on the living story strategy, and one day they'll be confident enough to say no and not be scared of losing, you know, player base. But I think the other, probably much more real reason is they really are working on an expansion, and there will be an expansion at some point. And I'm very confident that will be Cantha. That's the story with the series, and it's just a matter of waiting, guys. Next question comes from Repulsive, who says, how many people do you have on your followers list? Yay, a question where I can kind of brag in a weird way. I would tell you if this thing actually had a counter. I was talking to someone about it literally last night. It doesn't have a counter, and there's no way I'm going to count all of them. I can tell you one thing, that a long time ago, like a year ago, I couldn't open my friends list, even though the followers appear in a separate tab, because there are so many of them. If I tried to open my friends list, particularly if I was doing it while recording, it would lag my client out for multiple minutes at a time, and I blame that mostly on, you know, shoddy coding from ArenaNet side, but, you know, it would seriously lag my client out, just because the second you would open that window, it would try and load a bazillion names. It still does that if I click to my follower tab, but they made a a very specific update last year that nobody cared about, I'm sure, except a very few people. I really enjoyed this update because it actually meant I could finally use my friends list again. I don't know how many people are on my followers list, but it's quite a lot. The thing I find more interesting is my EU account. My EU account has the character name Wooden Potatoes on it. So anyone who just sees my channel here and doesn't, you know, look close enough to know that I play a character called Lys, L-Y-S, they add Wooden Potatoes, and I'm never online on my EU account, very rarely, maybe if I'm PvPing, but I have a look at my followers list there, and I'm always very curious about all the people that signed up here, have added this player that is, like, never online, and I remain on their friends list to this day. The next question is from Push My Char, who says, what does he mean by doubling up on wardens? This was something I talked about last week, and it relates to the way Mesmers play in dungeons. Now, Warden is your Focus 5 skill, and it summons a Phantasm who does the same animation as Axe 5 on, say, Ranger. And what this thing does is it blocks all projectiles by default, and if you trait it, it will reflect all projectiles. And because projectile destruction and reflection is so powerful in dungeons, whenever you're stacked in general, it's great to have a Warden go up. Obviously, the main thing most Mesmers think of when they think of reflection is they think of feedback, and that's true, you can use feedback. But once the feedback is over, ideally you want to have just casted a Warden so that the feedback ends, and enemies have been getting reflected the whole time. You've been doing massive damage to them, they've been doing none to you. And then just as the feedback ends, your Warden should be up, and then the Warden's doing the same job. But the thing is, as a Phantasm, it's not always reflecting projectiles, it stops every now and then. And it tends to be as soon as a Warden stops doing this, if you're in a projectile-heavy area, such as Caudicus's Manor, that Warden will then get instantly cleaved down. Maybe not all the time, but it will die. And then you have no more projectile reflection. So that's one part of the puzzle. The other part of the puzzle is a while ago they added some new heal skills to the game, and the Mesmer one, if you pop this heal skill, it instantly recharges all of your Phantasms. Now, your Wardens do base damage, okay? So as a Mesmer, when you pop a Warden, you start seeing all these big pretty numbers ticking up. Even if they're not reflecting, they're doing nice big numbers. So most Mesmers, if they're a little bit less informed, what they'll do is they'll go into a stack, they'll maybe feedback, they'll drop their Warden, then they'll drop their Signet Heals straight away and drop another Warden instantly, and now they have 2 Wardens doing the swell thing, and it stacks massive numbers, and they're like, oh, I'm amazing, right? But then what happens is both Wardens end up channeling their attacks at the same time, and you have no projectile deflection going on at all, and possibly both of them get cleaved out. However, if you wait just a moment, you can avoid this. If you drop, say, a Warden, okay, it does its animation, you pop your Signet to instantly recharge it, and then you wait until your first Warden's just finished its attack to pop your second. Now, the second Warden's doing its animation while the first one's on cooldown. And when the second one ends, you can say drop a temporal curtain, maybe your feedback, wait a couple of seconds, and then the first one will start doing it again. And in this way, you have permanent coverage on your Wardens. So last week I was talking about how you can spot a bad Mesmer. In my opinion, maybe there are a lot of situations where you can just double up on them, but that's the idea, doubling up. If a Mesmer just goes in and he goes Warden, Signet, Warden straight away, you know that he's not playing the longer, he's not really thinking about the full story here, and eventually you're going to lose your projectile blocks and stuff. It totally depends on the dungeon, totally depends on the comp and the encounter, so you can't make a flat judgment, but that is generally what I was talking about. The next question is from Alization, who says, WP, did you hear when the dev said in the live stream there are now some hidden things hinting to future content in the Labyrinthine Cliffs? I have heard of this, and I have attempted to do some research on what these future hints could be. I was even going to make a video on it, but it actually looks like there's nothing very substantial. As far as I can see, is they've added a new ship to the Zephyrite's fleet. One of the characters, Scholar Ella McKay, who was responsible for some of the texts we saw appear on the websites, she's basically saying, oh, maybe I should go with the Zephyrites, maybe in an official capacity, which could be quite interesting. It could mean we get stories from her from, you know, other continents and Mars across the sea. I'd really like that. Again, could even point to some kind of big expansion around Cantha maybe, or something like that. But what else is there, really? I mean, there's the hints to do with Canak. That's not in the Labyrinthine Cliff. The new airship glows strangely at night. And then I really don't know. I've seen some posts on Reddit, for example, about character conversations, but nothing looks to excite me that much, and so I can't really talk enthusiastically about it on the channel. Maybe some people will find some other stuff. I'm trying to keep my ears open. If you guys have got any ideas, leave them in the comments, and maybe that video will happen. But yeah, I don't think it's anything very substantial. ArenaNet seem to struggle leaving us hints that are fun to talk about. You know, maybe they're being a little bit too cryptic. I don't know. Anyway, there you go, guys. That was the last question, I guess, for today, since we've already been going for a little while. Thank you very much for watching. Videos will be coming out in immense pace. Like, honestly, there's at least 2 LPs I'm already working on right now. And as soon as they're actually going, then I'll be rolling out with the Guild Wars 2 stuff again very soon. I really still want to do my Elementalist build video. I think I do have a lot to offer on that. So keep an eye out for that. And thank you very much for watching, guys. Leave any questions you have down in the comments below. And I'll see you next time. Have a great day, everyone.